My guest on this episode is an absolute legend. If you think that because you don't have an education in tech, that starting a career in tech is impossible, you're dead wrong. Tom Dreyfus, the founder of a Melbourne-based legal tech, completely shatters that idea. In this episode, Tom teaches us how someone without a tech background can shift into a tech career and even found a tech company. Tom shares some incredible wisdom about his process of learning and unlearning to make his tech business successful. He even tells a story of a graduate lawyer he hired who shifted into a senior product management role and successfully is now leading his company. This channel is all about helping you shift into a tech career. Tom delivers. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram. Let's get it. Okay, well, I want to welcome Tom Dreyfus to the Sprint Hard, Iterate Fast podcast. Tom is the CEO of Joseph Legal. Tom, you began your career as a lawyer, I believe. You moved into academia, and then I believe you kind of jumped into legal tech entrepreneurship. Can you tell us a little bit more about the man, Tom Dreyfus, and also your story, how you ended up where you are today?
Sure, happy to, and glad to be here with you, Reggie. I started my career as a lawyer. I actually went to law school with my co-founder Sam, who I ended up starting Joseph with, and we ended up going to the same law firm straight out of law school. We both lasted about 2.5 years as corporate lawyers, and I think that for anyone who's been a lawyer before, but certainly anyone who's worked in professional services, there's a kind of a particular mindset that you have to bring to the work, especially in corporate law. It really is all about the money. Helping your clients fight for it was kind of my job because I was a litigator. And it turned out that 2.5 years of that was more than enough for me. And so when I got out of the law firm kind of environment, I started looking at different ways that I could practice law, be a part of the industry, because I really loved being a lawyer, and I loved the legal industry. And after some time in academia, some time working in the court system, and working with a couple of different not-for-profits, I had seen enough to know that there were better ways of delivering legal services, better ways of practicing law. I might not have known what they were, but I could kind of feel it in my bones that there was a
Yeah.
better way of doing things. And that's always been something that I think has driven me throughout my career. Being better all the time. Like I always want to be better at whatever it is I'm doing. And so when this kind of big picture realization about legal practice hit me, that there must be a better way, I stopped and I started to think about what that might be. And I think that was really where Joseph started, well before it had its name, well before we even knew what it was going to be. It was Sam and me sitting down and having a conversation about how legal services could be better, both for the lawyers doing the work, but also for the clients on the receiving end.
That's really interesting. I think a lot of our listeners, they're kind of might find themselves in the position where they've gone to school for a particular, career,
Mm-hmm.
and then found themselves in the position where maybe that career is not as satisfying or rewarding as they might have thought it was going to be. How did you kind of manage that pivot, that changed from, having studied law, having been a lawyer to now, okay, now I'm going to move into, the tech side of this. What was that like for you?
I mean, it's tough in a whole lot of ways. You have to learn, and you have to learn fast, a whole lot of skills that you don't get taught at school. I think a lot of them are skills that you really can only learn on the job. But for us, it definitely was kind of diving straight into the deep end when we founded our company. One of the one of the things that I now know about lawyers is that we are trained risk managers. That's kind of what being a lawyer is in a lot of circumstances. And that is something that I had to unlearn in order to be a good startup founder. Because building a successful startup is all about taking risk. the right amount of risk, sure, but taking risk feels uncomfortable for a lawyer. And so for me, that was one of the big challenges that I had to overcome. Ultimately, though, and this is still the thing that gets me out of bed every morning. When I was a lawyer, I had a client on any given day who I could help with their legal problem. It's kind of a very one-to-one relationship. When I founded Joseph and the platform started being used by tens and then hundreds and then thousands of lawyers, each of whom had their own set of clients. And I realized that the product I was building could be exponentially more impactful than me as a single person helping a single client at a time. That kind of that moment when I realized that the potential of applying technology to help the delivery of legal services could have that exponential impact, that was super exciting, and honestly it continues to be exciting. It's the driving force behind so much of what we do at Joseph.
Obviously, you put a lot of time and thought and energy into Joseph, and I want to get into Joseph in a second and learn more about
Sure.
the product, the technology, the industry. Like I want to dive into that, but before we move into that, I want to know. Just based on what you just talked about in terms of having to navigate that transition, that kind of lawyer mindset of kind of managing risk, if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? What would you tell yourself to prepare yourself for where you are today?
It's a really good question. I think that it'd be something like don't take no for an answer.
Wow. Okay.
Um, that that was hard,
Wow.
right? I feel like for a lot of high achievers, a lot of the people kind of listening, probably listening in to this, you're used to this kind of linear progression in your career where you do well at school, so you get into a good university, and then you do well in university, so you get a good job, and then so on and so forth, hopefully. When you start a company, it's not going to be good at the start. Like, even if your idea is great and you are the perfect person to execute on it, most of the people you talk to about whatever it is that you're starting are going to tell you some version of no. Either like, no, that's not a good idea, or no, I don't want to buy that, or no, I don't want to invest in that. There's going to be some version of no. And I thought at the start that no meant that the idea was bad, that I wasn't kind of good enough to execute on it, that my company was just like a big no for a whole bunch of people. And that's deeply, deeply untrue. You're always going to be a no for some people, but you're also always going to be a yes for some people. And you've got to go out and find those people. You can't take all the no's as the definitive answer to whatever question you're asking. You just got to go out and keep hunting for the yeses. I know I sound like a startup cliche, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the start. So I found the early part of the journey really hard. And then a couple of great mentors helped me to see kind of what I just said, that for every no that you get, there's a yes out there somewhere. And that really helped me keep going.
Tom Dreyfus dropping nuggets of wisdom. That is fantastic, and that is so useful to so many people. And I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability. I think we look at startup founders, especially ones that in your position that are quite successful. You've received several rounds of funding, I believe. You guys are building a great team, which I want to talk to you about in a little bit. And I think the way you deliver that message is super helpful for our audience to understand that not taking a no, understanding that it might not be the right thing for that person, but for someone else. That's fantastic. That's really good. I'd love to hear a little bit more about Joseph. Like, what is Joseph? Our audience, I mean,
Sure.
kind of the value proposition is this, we're going to peel back the hood on innovative tech companies. What are they building? What's the team like? What's the culture like? So can you tell us, what is Joseph, and what industry are you playing in?
Absolutely. So Joseph is a no-code legal automation platform. So what that basically means is we built a piece of software that is designed to be easy and non-technical enough for lawyers to build their own automation tools. So every day, lawyers are out there doing the basics of their job. They're interviewing clients, so asking a whole bunch of questions and gathering information. They are drafting legal documents that help their clients solve whatever legal problem they have. They are working their way through legislation and case law and regulations, trying to work out answers to really hard questions. What they do on our platform is turn each of those tasks into automation tools that can deliver their services at scale. So you've got a client interview, sure, do it once, but then that templated set of questions you can build into an application on Joseph that you deploy out to the next client and the next client, the next client. You've got some template documents that you're used to drafting. Turn those into automated templates on Joseph that clients can use to generate first drafts. You have deep knowledge of regulational legislation. Take that knowledge and turn it into an application on our platform that helps your clients make better, more legally correct decisions that apply to their businesses. So we are focused, we're a vertical specific company, so we're focused on legal services and how we make legal better. But within the industry itself, we're solving a lot of problems for lawyers.
That's really fascinating. Tom, can you talk to us about, there's been a kind of a no-code, low-code movement for the last few years now. And what you said is that you're focused on a vertical. How does Joseph, differentiate itself and compete against other maybe, non-industry specific no-code, low-code platforms?
Totally. So there are a bunch of different ways that we make sure that we deliver the best possible experience for legal professionals who are our target customers. The first is on the product. So we're kind of a product obsessed company, because lawyers are notoriously technophobic. I feel like people, when you ask people like what they know about lawyers, one of the things they might just say, even if they know nothing about lawyers, is hates technology. Building technology for that kind of end user is a challenge, and a challenge that you can only overcome if you are product obsessed. And so both in the design of our product and also in the feature set that we offer, we make sure that lawyers will be able to solve the specific problems that lawyers have on our platform. That's pretty hard for some of those more kind of industry agnostic or generalist no-code automation platforms. The second way we do it is actually around the team that we build to help our customers succeed on the product. So one of the things that we've learned over time is that making sure that we've got people at Joseph in our sales, our product, our customer success teams who have a little bit of a legal background, whether that's because they went to law school or, their boyfriend's a lawyer or whatever, it doesn't matter. Somehow being able to deeply empathize with the problems our customers are solving and also speak their language helps give them some of that confidence they need to start using technology more productively in their work. And so what I'm really saying here is the way that we compete is by being like a legal automation platform and everything that comes with it, from product to customer success to the personnel that we have in our company, helping to define us in the legal industry's mind as a platform built for them.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you have any examples of how you guys have had impact already in your industry? How you've, kind of disrupted how things are working in the legal space today?
Totally. So I'll give you a couple of kind of quick numbers just to give you a sense. So you build applications on Joseph that automate the delivery of a particular legal service, helping someone to solve their problem. We call them bots. Bots built on our platform have been used just over 300,000 times now to solve problems. So if you think about that, that's 300,000 legal problems that have been solved by a fully automated solution built on our platform.
Wow.
Our customers are in Australia, the US, and the UK. And so not only are we having an impact in that kind of pure sort of numbers sense, but also geographically. We were founded in Australia, and so our foothold in the market here is stronger, but we're starting to make inroads in those kind of bigger expansion markets. So that's kind of one of the ways that we look at impact. The other thing that I'd call out, though, is that for us, the mission remains making legal services more accessible.
Wow, okay.
So ultimately, what our customers do is that they build automation tools that help to make access to the solution to whatever legal problem their clients have easier. That can be quicker. It can be making it available wherever and whenever the client needs it. In a lot of circumstances, it actually just means making it cheaper. Because when you take a whole lot of human steps out of a workflow, you can deliver the service at the end of that workflow a whole lot more cheaply than if it's done manually all the way through. And the reason I call that out is because a big part of our work remains with legal aid organizations.
Yeah.
So both in Australia, the US, and the UK, we have organizations that exist to help people who can't afford to pay anything with their legal problems. And when these organizations use Joseph, and there are about 30 of them worldwide using our platform, they can start to deliver solutions to legal problems at scale for people who would otherwise have nowhere to turn for help. And so we're always looking at our impact, both in that kind of global sense, how many problems are we solving, but then also in the more kind of human sense, who are the humans whose legal problems we're helping to solve?
Yeah, that's really good. I like that, and I like the dual focus on impact. So it's not all about the uptake, the customer uptake, but it's also about how are you impacting people's lives in a real tangible way. I want to get into a little bit more about I suppose how you run the business, a bit more about innovation. I think our listeners are really keen to understand how you innovate, and I guess the first kind of thing I'd be interested in knowing about is how do you balance the need to move quickly and make bold decisions with the need for careful planning and execution as a lead person for Joseph?
So making fast decisions is one of the things that I think has set Joseph up for success. We pride ourselves on our ability to make the decisions that need to be made fast. Not every decision needs to be made fast or should be made fast. And so before you even get to that question, you have to answer the preceding one, which is, what kind of decision is this?
Yeah.
Is this a decision that I can unmake? Or is this a decision that once made is kind of forever? Because if it's the second kind, then it's okay to go slow. We use a few different kinds of frameworks for making those types of decisions. We try to focus on kind of pretty deep collaboration when it comes to those bet the company decisions, because as a founding team, we know that now that we've surrounded ourselves with super smart people, making sure that they're in the room, that they're fully informed and able to contribute to those big decisions is going to help us get to a better place than if we just continue to operate in a kind of founder silo. The balance is hard, but it's a muscle that you can train. And so we're always talking about exactly that question, how we make decisions. We're always giving each other feedback on how we can get to quicker decisions about, things that should be decided on quickly. but then also making sure that we leave space for collaboration when it comes to the big stuff.
That makes sense. I'm interested to know, given that you've been through, this startup journey, has there been a time where you guys have had to, pivot away quickly from a bad decision or a failure or, an outcome that you hadn't intended, and you've had to kind of turn on a dime? Has that happened yet?
Yeah, I mean, not so much because of a decision that we made, but I'd say there have been two times where that has happened in the last 3 years. The first was COVID, and the second that the pandemic hit. Well, no, it is actually an example of what you just asked about. The second the pandemic hit, a whole bunch of decisions that we'd made turned out to be the wrong decisions. I mean, we literally couldn't have known, but we had to unmake some of those decisions and make new decisions about how we were going to grow the company really, really quickly. The second time was in the first half of last year when the technology markets all over the world kind of crashed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, expectations for companies in kind of hypergrowth like ours went from asking, what's your top line revenue growth? And that's the only question anyone's going to ask, to how sustainable a company are you building? And underneath that shift in focus from the outside world on us was a shift in what investors were going to value, in what future employees were going to value, in what the market was valuing. And so we went through a bit of a process internally of adjusting our own focus and making sure that the company that we were building was set up to operate for the long term, to be sustainable, while still kind of maintaining that hypergrowth culture.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I wonder how your team reacted towards that. Like, what was the reception of, hey, we need to move away from just the hypergrowth focus to being more sustainable? How did that impact, the culture of the company that you're creating?
I think we were fortunate in a lot of ways because we have always grown Joseph capital efficiently. We never set out to be a company that just kind of was going to measure its success by how much money we'd raised.
Yeah.
And so it didn't feel like a shift, to be honest, so much as a realignment. Culturally, that didn't mean anything very different for most of our team. It simply meant kind of doing more of what we knew we were really good at, and maybe a little bit less of the kind of pie in the sky, super risky stuff that may or may not work. And so, yeah, there's a bit of a shift in mindset in relation to that we definitely talked a lot about internally, because it's true that is a shift from us saying yes to absolutely everything. You've got an idea, let's go out and get it, to you've got an idea, tell me about why it's going to work. Then we'll go out and get it.
Yeah.
That is a little bit of a shift, but it's not kind of existential for us because we'd already set ourselves up operationally to grow sustainably. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to answer the question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you describe, what is the culture that you're building? I think I might have, in some research, heard you talk about failure, and about kind of creating the space for that to happen. Can you talk to us a little bit more about, what is the culture that, you're creating at Joseph? What's it like to work there?
Sure. I honestly think that the failure trope is kind of overdone in startup land. Like, yes, it is totally okay to fail at Joseph, and no one's going to come down on anyone. We are trying new things every single day. Um, I still think the hardest part about my job is that I have to learn something new pretty much every single day. Still, like I've been doing this for a few years now, and still every single day I do something I've never done before.
Wow.
And it's both the best and hardest part of my job. And at least half of those things I mess up the first time. And so, and I try to be pretty open about messing up those things so that other people know that it's okay for them to also mess up the things that they're doing for the first time, and that they should be doing things for the first time. But the 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 biggest part of our culture, and the part that we work the hardest to maintain is honesty. Sorry, is honesty. Um, we we make the founders available kind of every week to openly answer any question that anyone wants to ask us about the business.
Yeah.
We have sessions all the time internally, helping people to understand how to give and receive feedback so that they can bring that value of honesty to work. The reason I wrap feedback up into this is because it is almost impossible to be honest if the person on the receiving end of your honesty isn't going to take it well.
Yeah.
And so you have to train that feedback muscle in order to kind of lay the foundations for honesty being one of the kind of the core values of a culture that you're building. We found that when we strip back everything else, and we have a lot of other values that are really important to us, that are reflected in the way that we work together, in the care that we show for each other, in the way that we support each other to do our best work. We found that honesty is the one that if we stay true to, everything else kind of follows.
That's really good. I want to press you on that a little bit. I'm thinking about like the Ray Dalio and the radical candor kind of honesty. Is that
Yeah.
the extent that you guys go to kind of get to the truth, or is it more of like just creating a space where people feel like they can talk about what's really going on? Maybe you could share a little light on kind of what you mean
Yeah,
by that honesty.
absolutely. It's more the latter. So I think that the downsides of radical candor for a lot of people are, one, feeling pressured to share something that they're not comfortable with,
Yeah.
and two, you kind of you end up listening to people with loud voices if you insist on radical candor. Whereas if you create spaces in which people feel comfortable being honest, and listening to other people's honesty, delivered on terms that are comfortable for both sides of that conversation, we found that that's a better recipe for creating a safe and supportive work environment than simply insisting that no one ever holds anything back in any circumstances.
Yeah.
So you're totally right. It is something that you have to manage pretty carefully, because there are pitfalls to every approach that you can take in this space.
Yeah.
Finding the right balance is tough, but again, strip it back, and if you create a space for talking about that, like, let's talk about how we talk about stuff. It's not an easy thing to do, but if one of your values, if one of the things that you're going to make sure you protect is that culture of honesty, then it's self-reinforcing. You're going to get better at talking about things because you can talk honestly about how you talk about things.
Yeah.
We found that approach works for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tom, I've been involved with a few startups, a few of my own, some other ones that I joined. None of them as successful or exciting as Joseph Legal. But one of the things I did notice was that the people that you bring on can start to shape the culture as well, and they can start to drive growth in their own ways. Do you have any examples of any employees or teams that have, really contributed to shaping your culture or driving growth?
Absolutely. I think that you're totally right that when you start a startup and it's just the founders, um, it's the company just looks a whole lot like you. You know, you're in complete control of internal and external perception and reality,
Yeah.
because it's just you. And as soon as you start bringing on people to join the team, you both lose some of that control, but also start to see the benefit and the growth that comes from new personalities, new ideas, and everything that they can bring to the table. One of the places that I really noticed it was when we brought in our first design lead. So from the start, we'd only ever had kind of contract designers helping us with the product, helping us with the brand and marketing strategy. When we hired our first design lead, he came in and he embedded a whole new way of thinking across the entire company.
Wow.
Made sure that it kind of didn't matter where you were or what problem you were solving. You had this new framework for thinking through problems.
Wow.
And it wasn't just kind of pure design thinking. It was this guy had actually stopped and said, what does Joseph need to start to embed design into like better design, whether that's process design or systems design or visual design or user interface design, all sorts of different types of design. How do we embed those into different parts of the organization? And so the legacy that he's created at the company is just so much bigger than him or his role, because we've been able to see the impact that he's had across literally every function in the entire company. So I love that example. The other example that I want to give is actually our product. One of our senior product managers now started with us fresh out of law school as a law graduate. He was on a path to becoming a lawyer, and that was the thing that he was going to do. And he decided to get an internship with us because he was like, I wonder what legal tech's all about. And over the past 4 years, he has built himself up through a combination of kind of mentoring and training and formal learning that we've encouraged him to pursue, and also just his totally insatiable curiosity. He has built himself up from an intern as a law graduate with absolutely no relevant experience to like our most senior product manager. And the reason that I highlight him, other than that just being like an amazing success story, is he embodies something that we love seeing at Joseph, which is a willingness to get your hands dirty, to try new things, to kind of not pigeonhole yourself and just say, this is my job. I'm going to draw between the lines and that's all I'm ever going to do. That's what set him up for success. And I think that a lot of people now look at him and think, well, if that was possible for him at Joseph, like where could I go? And the answer is kind of anywhere. And we're going to try to support people to get there.
That's really fascinating, and I love hearing those stories, and I think that our listeners are really going to get a lot of value out of those stories, because I think a lot of people are thinking they want to shift into a tech job, they want to shift into startup, but they don't believe they have the experience, or they don't know if it's the right thing for them. But I love that idea of that insatiable curiosity, and I think that's a really valuable takeaway for our audience to think about that. I can see how that's a lot of value to you as an organization, to have someone on your team who embodies the values and the culture that you're trying to build, and is obviously a gun product manager. So well done. That's really cool. Just as we're kind of wrapping up, I'm curious about Joseph Legal. Are there any kind of unique or unconventional perks or benefits? Because a lot of our listeners will be looking for a job. They're looking for something new. I think it'd be good to understand from your perspective, are there unconventional perks or benefits that you guys offer? Is there something that you do that's different than everyone else in terms of your employee experience?
I'm sure that there is nothing that we do that someone else hasn't also done, but I'm still going to tell you about some of the great things
Nice.
that we know that we do at Joseph. So the one of the things we instituted a couple of years back now is Joseph Days. We give everyone 1 day a month to just do whatever they want with. It's a super simple thing, like not annual leave, not sick leave. It's your Joseph Day. And so you can do whatever you want to, take the day off and just go lie in a park and read a book. Then great, take your Joseph Day, go do it. It's incredible. Like a lot of people don't even, like some people at Joseph don't even take their Joseph Day, and they say that just like knowing that they can, if they feel the need, like they're feeling a bit tired, and so they're just gonna make a regular week a 4-day week, and then come back refreshed the next week. It's a little thing. It's a little thing for us to do, but it's a big deal for a lot of people at Joseph, just having that extra day a month that isn't going to come out of their leave to just do whatever they want with. We have a super outsized learning and development budget for each of our employees. And our philosophy on this one, and I know that it's a philosophy that a lot of people share, is sure, we could, not invest in people's learning and development, and they might leave, but also they might stay and we won't have invested in their learning and development. Or, we could invest heavily in their learning and development, and sure, they might go and take those skills and go off somewhere else, but they'll be raving about Joseph and probably send someone even better our way. Or they'll grow as people and they'll stay and they'll make the whole company better. And so we really do believe in investing in learning and development at Joseph. And then the last thing, last year, like what was it? 4 months ago now, we had a global company retreat in Bali. Where we brought the whole of the company together for a whole week in Bali. There was a bunch of work, but a bit of play as well. Yeah. And so we have a global retreat every year somewhere, well, ideally super fun.
Yeah.
Which I think is a nice way to make sure that people can connect with each other in a remote first company, which is, I guess, another perk. Joseph is remote first. We'll support people to work from wherever they want to work, even though we do have offices.
Nice. Very cool. Bali, sign me up. Where do I sign up? That sounds awesome. That sounds really, really cool. Tom, what 3 pieces of advice do you have for anyone who wants to apply and work for Joseph Legal?
Good question. So the first piece of advice I have is the best way to get a job at Joseph, but also kind of anywhere, is find someone who works there, catch up with them, and learn as much as you can about the company. Get yourself an in, both so that you're kind of pre-vetted for any hiring process, but also to give you an opportunity to work out if Joseph is actually somewhere you want to work. Second thing I would say, and this is specific to Joseph, is if you don't know a little bit about legal tech or the legal industry, learn something. We value people who come to conversations about roles with us who understand a little bit about the problem. You don't need to be an expert. We don't expect anyone to be an expert before they start. But, you know, if you're coming to an interview and you're asking us, what's legal tech? Then you're probably not someone that we think has that kind of curiosity, that drive to learn that we're looking for at Joseph. And then the third thing about getting a job at Joseph is and again, you can probably do this by talking to someone at Joseph, but you can definitely do this by kind of doing a bit of research, reading blog posts, learning more about the company. But make sure that at least you think that you are values and mission aligned with us. Not everyone's going to be, and that's totally fine, to be very, very clear. But we're going to want to know that about you. We're going to want to have a conversation with you about, you know, what our values, what our mission might mean to you. And we want to know that you've thought about them, and that, you know, you've decided that because of what we're trying to achieve at Joseph, it's a place that you want to work, not just because they happen to have a role going that you might be a fit for.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Tom Dreyfus, CEO, Joseph Legal, on the Sprint Hard, Iterate Fast podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your expertise, and sharing some advice to our listeners who might want to work for your company or might just want to hear, you know, really good insights from a CEO of a tech company that they can use in their career journey. So thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you.